I'm excited about today's webinar.
This is good information. I really like the fact that we're really looking at, we hear so much about workforce and not having enough workers and all those kind of things when we have a plethora of people who have experiences that can be utilized at the workforce when they're coming out of their military career. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and what always gets me is we always talk about this like longevity of like planning for a workforce, and year after year we get 250,000 service members that are coming back to our states that are already primed, and we think of it as like a restart. There's so many things that like over the last 3 webinars, and this is as we kind of get everybody together here, as we start thinking about the last 3 webinars, we realize it's not a restart of a career. It needs to be a continuation.
That's right. That's what we're hearing. And so even today, with what we're going to hear from those that you spoke to earlier in the week, just the fact that you're saying 250,000 people.
Yeah, and that's just the service members. That's not families. That's not
Right.
children that are coming into the school systems that we have really talked about in a lot of TPMA work. Vicki, I think we're teeing up and we're getting excited about the webinar. So
Let's go.
yeah, let's do it. Right. So I'm excited about this webinar. This is the 4th of our 4th part series on veterans and in our communities, and they have all taken their own shape and personality over the last 3, and kind of due respect. This one will be a little bit different. So I kind of want to set the format real quick. So my name is Kelly Friend. I am the Senior Manager of Workforce and Education here at TPMA. I am here with Vicki. Vicki, quick introduction.
I'm Vicki Thompson. I'm the Senior Director of Workforce Growth Partnerships.
Yeah, so Vicki and I are friends here at work. We do a lot of work in workforce and education for TPMA. And just a quick shout out to TPMA and supporting this work that we are doing with veterans and their communities. So as we move forward, I just want to kind of set the format for this. And what we will do today is we will play clips. And here's the reason why. We had some great speakers that I met with on Tuesday, and you're going to meet them here shortly. But trying to get a timeline for very busy people in the veteran community space, in the foundation space, those that are doing good work, their calendars are booked, absolutely booked. So Vicki and I are going to be sort of like your podcast, your guides, and we're going to hear from our friends. But we're gonna play clips, react. In addition, the Q&A is open. So this is a little different than our webinars before. The chat should be open for you to ask questions to Vicki and I as we go along. So we keep this as interactive as possible. Allison is behind the scenes, and she is going to introduce us to our panelists that we interviewed on Tuesday. So take it from there.
I'm Lucy Dold. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of White County. I have been in my role for 3 years and been with the foundation for 6 years. And prior to that, my experience coming into this space has been in case management, so working really closely in the nonprofit space and also education.
Thank you, Lucy. Nate, do you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Nathan Baker. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for White County, Indiana. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am one of the ones that had we'll call it a case study done in my county. So it really opened our eyes to some of the things that we could really focus on, do better. It also provided some input on some things we are doing well. So we've taken that report and we are now trying to kind of get those things, these processes and procedures out to other counties. So very happy with how everything turned out, and we appreciate everything you guys have done.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into it and really hear your guys' perspective. Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me. Nicole Roshan. I'm the Director of Advancement for INVETS. I've been with INVETS for about a year. Got about 20 years of nonprofit experience, but the last 10 really focusing on education and workforce development. And INVETS is a terrific organization. We partner with veterans, families, and businesses to facilitate a meaningful transition for military members, and we serve statewide, but I'm based in Warsaw in Northeast Indiana.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. So, all right. So those are our friends that we got to meet while doing a study here at TPMA. So one of the ways that we have happy collisions with people is we get to do work with them. So one of the pieces of work that I was involved with was the White County paper, and that is something that Nathan was talking about right there. So this paper outlined the ability and the strengths and the opportunities that White County had for veterans. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that as we start playing the clips. Vicki, anything that you want to say about our panelists?
Only that I think it's important to note that they're all coming from different perspectives. And so then as we go through the rest of these clips, you're going to hear more about that, and that will come out more. And just to reiterate that they're all in Indiana. And so as we move along, as you have questions, and as Kelly has said, please just go ahead and put those in the chat as we move along. And then Kelly and I will go through those as we're going and stopping with the clips.
Yeah. So the next clip is actually from the foundation's perspective. So Lucy, as being the executive director of the White County Foundation, it was kind of her start to getting this case study done and really understanding where veterans were coming from. But we're going to play that clip because it's really interesting, because a lot of people don't know how to start the investigation. Kind of, if you're going to be a detective and you really want to know where are these talent pipelines, how are people interacting, how do I start getting involved in understanding what veterans need out of my county, that this is exactly where she was. So Allison, do you mind teeing that up for us? Through TPMA, because you had a want, right? And you want to talk a little bit what this want was, or this idea, and then we'll kind of play it through.
Sure. Yeah, that wasn't too long ago. I think it was December that we got together. The foundation this is our third year working in the mental health space, and we had historically been focusing on the youth. But we heard of some regional projects taking place in the community, impacting veteran mental health. And so we were a little curious to dive deeper into this space and touch the other end of the spectrum besides youth. So it was through a Lilly Gift 8 planning grant that we were able to partner with TPMA. We wanted to identify the needs of our veteran population and get a scope of the assets that are here, not just around mental health, but really the whole landscape in the veteran space. It was quite new to us. So we were able to engage with veterans all across the county, veteran serving agencies that are working here locally as well as regionally and statewide, government and nonprofit leaders. It was just a wonderful, engaging process. And we did that over a period of 3 months to engage our local folks and capture data that was compiled into this White County report that we're going to talk a lot about today, I anticipate.
So So Vicky, the White County report was pretty significant to the foundation. And everybody that's here on this call, Lucy really thought it was going to be a mental health, right? So that's where it started. And what she ended up getting was stakeholder engagement. We did 2 town halls, one with veteran voices, the second to unravel our findings and meet with the mayor, the commissioners, and other stakeholders and veterans themselves. We did a asset map, which I believe that you will hear more about, but it was pretty comprehensive. We were able to put a lens on that showed, like, are these really good nonprofits? Are these really agencies that have the ability to change and add value to the veteran journey into your county? And are they doing what they say? So she got a very comprehensive report. I think it ended up, not to scare anybody here, but I think it ended up to be like 100 pages, right? Of and if you understand kind of the dynamics of what White County looks like in Indiana, it's very rural. They have a recreation center, which is Monticello. So there's a lake, and there are a lot of there's an entertainment portion of that, but the rest of it is very rural. So for her to find that there's a lot of assets for veterans was a little bit of a surprise. But we'll get to a little bit of a aha moment in the future here. Vicky, what what am I missing here?
No, I don't think you're missing anything, but one of the things that I thought was interesting that she mentioned was the fact that they use some Lilly grant money to be able to do it. And so
Mhm.
I'm just hoping that our audience, as we think about this, and as you consider if this is something that would be helpful in your neck of the woods, just really thinking about who possible funders can be and that kind of thing. And so I think that, the Lilly Grants, Lilly Foundation, those are pretty well known. But just thinking about, off the top of your head, that if there are funders and that kind of thing, who they could possibly be. And so I think it's interesting that, when we think about Lilly, I know I always think about healthcare, right? Because where I am, that's how I always hear about the Lilly Foundation. But the fact that there may be dollars and funding available in your state or in your region for this type of study, I think is something that I hope that people will keep top of mind as they're listening through these clips and what was able to be done with that type of funding.
Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, I think a lot of our work starts with how does a study like this get funded, right? Like, we know that there's a need, or we have a problem that we would like an answer for, or we have an inclination that this is happening in our community, and we would really want it to be verified. Um, and and the unexpected things that happen is you find leaders in the community. So I got to meet one of them, and I hope he doesn't mind. Like, I think we're friends now, right? After all of this time. So Nathan, who is the veteran service officer, I keep on saying this, but I truly believe that he is a best practice. He's a best practice. He's a model in the state of Indiana. He could absolutely be a model to other states. If you start looking at like what it really takes to be a veteran service officer and be the hub. So we're gonna play a clip from Nathan, and he was really part of our stakeholder engagement and became a advocate for us meeting other veterans and meeting other organizations. So do you mind playing that clip for us?
The veteran space, I hadn't really been that connected to other organizations. But Nathan shows up in the community at different forums and coalitions and is always advocating for the veteran space. So he was already recognized by the foundation as a leader in the veteran space. And I knew that he was knowledgeable. I had heard through various entities and people that he is just a trusted source among not just the groups working in this space, but the veteran population themselves. So he had already had quite a reputation, and I knew he was going to be critical in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I have to say that one of the best practices is hearing from you, our client, and saying there's somebody that we really want to seek out, right?
So the only thing that really separates our office, which again, the recognition is always appreciated. It is, but that's wasn't part of the plan here. And I'm overly appreciative that everybody knows Nathan Baker, but the bottom line, it's if you're in this community or from here, it's Travis Clark, it's the police chief, it's Kathy Gross, the old mayor, it's Aaron Sims, the now mayor. All three commissioners for White County have the old ones and the new ones. One thing they can all agree on is, hey, if there's something veterans need, we're going to figure out how to do it. So a lot of paramedics, still to this day, paramedics have handed out more of my cards to veterans than I have. So really the only difference between this office and others is we've chosen to rely on the network of people that are already in every community. So instead of sitting here hoping veterans show up and hoping that there's something we can do for them, we've gone with a totally opposite approach. What we've done here as far as progress made, it all stems around getting the community involved, I guess, is the bottom. Making sure people know we exist, making sure people know that they can call, having a process in place that includes the follow-up. We don't drop the ball here. We have a process and procedure for the follow-up, the follow-through, the VA updates. That's what's led us to where we're at. And now, fortunately, we've helped get that Senate Bill 433 passed. We were big supporters of it. Again, and that was an unpopular opinion. You know, nobody wanted to hear about the great things that some accountability and some structure would do to veteran service officers. But that has turned into now we're working with the County Veteran Service Officers Association for the state to transform them into more of a safety net for VSOs into a training program for VSOs. And again, if the state and IDVA, to my understanding, they have a plan to do the same thing, and I respect that, but we are going to double down on that. So if for some reason the state takes a little longer than we think is appropriate, or if it's not where we think it should be, we're going to have our own. And we're hoping that things like this, working with InVets, TPMA, things of that nature, we're hoping that that's what gets at the attention and recognition it's going to take to see these standards for VSOs be a little bit higher. But overall, what we do, we just try to do the right things for veterans.
Vicki, is that your first time seeing that clip?
It is. I can tell you that this is one of the things that I really think TPMA does well. And it goes back to what Nathan's saying, right? Like he understands the importance of the ecosystem of bringing all the partners together. And one of the things that struck me that he said, and I put a note down, it's so very important how he was talking about previous administration, county administration, and current administration, and how everybody agrees. And that's one thing that I think that we can all be confident in saying is that everybody wants to have the opportunity to be involved in something that's going to be positive, and anything around vets is that, right? Like you want to figure out how to be better veteran ready and that kind of thing, which I know are things that that we'll talk about more. But just the fact that his comments are all about the importance of that ecosystem and people being able to talk to one another to be able to get something accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, ton of accolades to Nathan. Usually, you've been doing this work for a long time, Vicki, and it's very rare to come across somebody that has kind of started building their own ecosystem. So as practitioners and, researchers and, consultants in this business, he was a gold mine, right?
Absolutely. And he gets it. Like he understands the importance of, and he just started naming all those partners and who it was. And, and I'm still just struck by the fact that he understands and was really articulate about specifically saying, these are the people, this previous, this current, that, and understanding the importance of having all those people at the table.
And I also think he brings up some really good points. There are things that are happening at the state and local level that are going to require change. And that change has to occur from the people that are doing the work. Like that's where the voices are starting to get heard. And why we were writing that paper, that bill was coming through around the same time. So it was the first time that I got introduced to it. And I thought, oh, being in the veteran space for over a decade, and assisting with, different projects like this, I was like, how did I miss that? And it's so monumental. So being able to learn from our stakeholders about the things that are really they're pushing forward, and then also knowing the reason why, and then being able to put that into the paper and hope that the White County paper elevates their voice and gives them that, made me feel really part of the cause, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're the assets, right? Those are the people, the boots on the ground, the people experiencing every day. They are the assets to the type of work that was done, and even specifically for this project, because they have the knowledge, because they're living it, they're talking to partners, potential partners, and that kind of thing. And so to bring that type of knowledge to the table really does make them the assets, because they know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to hear a clip from Nicole from InVets here in a second. And that talks about like the opportunities part of the paper. So why, in my mind, the way we started mapping this out is, Nathan was bringing this ecosystem. He knew exactly how to serve the veterans in his county. He also saw the people that would help him, move his mission forward, and we're starting to look at this. But we also know that there needs to be a growing population. So we're going back to that talent, workforce, education, and how do we look at, and how we look at like TPMA, how do we look at that, and how do we look at a different talent pipeline? We're very, I think we all have the K through 14 conversation over and over again. So having the veteran talent pipeline conversation and moving into veterans as an opportunity to grow, live, and become veteran ready in the community was a little new, So we're going to hear from Nicole talking about the opportunity and what she's looking for when InVets is looking to bring new veteran talent and moving them in. So you're going to TS, there you go. See, at this point in this format, one of the things that we started to do as we were working through the paper is what does that look like? How do we bring more veterans to White County? And as we were looking through the stakeholder engagement, I wanted to start introducing Lucy and Nathan to more friends. They need more support, but they also need more people in their community that's going to be able to build it, because you guys are building, right? Nathan, this is going somewhere. Lucy, this is going somewhere, right? How do we get these components? And that's where InVets stepped in. And Nicole, you want to talk a little bit about InVets and the talent attraction that is unlike others in the state?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was funny today. We met with our VSO up here in Fort Wayne in Allen County. And so we were just talking about the regional approach versus the statewide approach. There were several initiatives throughout the state that were focused on attracting veterans, attracting, transitioning military to Indiana, talking about all the things we talk about: quality of life, low cost of living, great jobs, good schools. And then INVETS came around in about 2020, became our own entity after Governor Holcomb rolled out Next Level Veterans. And it all came under one umbrella, which was great. We consolidated a lot of efforts, but we missed out on the piece of really selling the regions and using specific industries, particular pathways for the different regions to attract the talent. So INVETS travels to over 40 military installations we have a relationship with across the U.S. We've been to Hawaii, Japan, Germany, visiting these different military installations and tapping into their Department of Labor, Department DoD program TAP. So about 2 years before a veteran or military member transition, we connect with them, start telling them about Indiana, about all the opportunities. And a lot of them might be from Indiana and just don't know how to get back to the state or aren't aware of the career opportunities because last time they were in high school and didn't connect with all the other industries across the state, and they might want to come back. So we help with that process of looking for jobs for them, translating their resume, ensuring we have the military skills make sense for the civilian skills that we're lining them up with in those specific industries, and do some networking for them, do some resume prep as well as interview prep, and then get them back here to Indiana, connect them with their local VSO, make sure they have access and all the right services here so that they are successful in their life after service.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And Dana from INVETS was at our town hall. So one of the components of this was bringing everybody together at the end and hearing from Dana. And I don't want to speak for him, but he called out some actions that he really would hope that White County would see, and that's he wants veteran families to move into White County. He sees the potential, the honest living, the heartland of what Indiana has to offer, and the vicinity of entertainment and jobs, and the things that veterans want to live here, right? So thank you. I appreciate that, Nicole. So that really explained a little bit more about what INVETS and the talent attraction looks like. And Indiana has INVETS that are going to those commands and those posts and really recruiting veterans to Indiana to live, stay. And our communities need to become more ready. We are learning this as they move forward, but our state is not unique in this. There's KY Valor in Kentucky. There are growing initiatives throughout the states that are looking at this as a talent pipeline and becoming competitive for these families to move to their states and really organizing themselves, or attempting, right, to organize themselves to bring those families in so that they increase that. Vicki, thoughts on this new approach? Because I can only think of a few, right?
Well,
so we got INVETS, Ohio,
Ohio, but that was what I was going to say, is that we know that there are, like you're saying, that they're across the nation, right? There are different but one of the things that we've heard in webinars 1 through 3, because this was the fourth one, remember, this was like part of a series, but 1 through 3, there was a lot of information given from people from different states that were on the panel about what it is they're trying to do. And some of the things are across the board familiar, right? Like military credit for prior learning, like those kind of things. And then there were some unique things going on as well. And so understanding that across the country, there are a number of organizations that are trying to figure out, how do you fit all this into the talent pipeline? How do we make sure that veterans are considered? And so to Nicole's point about how do you get people ready, everybody, I think, had a commonality about, resume writing and interview skills and those types of things. And, there are different entities that are trying, things may be a little bit different and tweaking, but I know that even in some of the work that we've done that wasn't specifically related to vets, we were talking about credit for prior learning and hearing from veterans about the challenges that they were having, right? And I know that in one of our webinars, one of the things that really struck me was the fact that we had somebody talking about the fact that they were driving big vehicles that,
Oh,
had weaponry on them and then they came back here and, they were told, well, you need your CDL. And they're like, I was just driving big, I mean, just the fact that we don't have an easy system for being able to translate, like we could be doing better, right?
yeah,
Those
I
are
am.
things we heard about 1 through 3.
Yeah. And, you know, I hope that somebody that really wants to take on that initiative. Because I got to tell you, I think you and I would love to do that work, right? We would love to solve for that. So I'm just going to put it out there. We would love to do the work because there's a couple reasons why I would love to do the work. Um, One, I mean, the population is skilled, ready, and go. The other is the on a personal level. We talked to in our last two webinars, we talked to Andrew, who works over at Barnhart, that to your point, he was driving heavy equipment overseas. He knew how to fix it on the fly. He was doing all of these things, and then he hit stateside as a civilian, and they're they're telling him it's
All of
not
a sudden, he
transferable,
doesn't qualify.
and he doesn't qualify.
Yeah,
It's
it's
mind-boggling,
the
right? So
frustration.
I would
Yeah.
love to pick up that and move some things forward for especially for the trades. I would love to move that forward. The second is we also heard from Roy, and he's a retired Marine, and he's trying to he's got all these, credits and trainings, and he's led teams on a mass scale, and, just smart in all the ways that you would want somebody to be smart. But to equivalent that to a degree has just been painful. And why is it such a process? And and really I mean, in my opinion, we're just holding up the talent pipeline. We're causing a bottleneck. Oh, you're on mute, Vicky. We gotcha.
I was just saying it shouldn't be that hard, right? Because that you have employers who are saying, we want people who have initiative. We want people who can learn quickly. We want people, and you have a whole set of people who can do that. And so we should make it the transition should be so much easier, and we should be willing to listen to one another to really figure out how to bring our former military who are now transitioning into civilian to be able to take these jobs that we know the jobs are there and we know we have skilled people for them.
Yeah.
So this should be a little bit easier.
And I'm gonna make sure I don't lose a population here. It's not just transitioning veterans. So Nathan and his work, I would say probably the majority, from my understanding and talking to him, are those that have lived and worked in the community for a long time. But we're still missing out on even in our state, we want to hit so many credentials. We need we need so much to go into the workforce and be retrained. How do we give value to a life that's already been full? How do we say, you know, you retired from one career, but now you have to restart in another? It doesn't, or you have lived here for, you know, 10 years and you have all these skills. How do you combine them and turn them into a credit for prior learning benefit?
There's a lot of disconnect that shouldn't be.
Oh yeah, and you know, and they also have funding, right? So GI Bill.
Come on. You know what? That's one of the things I think people forget about is that you're a veteran. It's very valuable to your community. They bring dollars to your community.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important for people to understand is that, you know, you want to work with your veterans, right? I mean, like, and always the first one off the top of my head, because I came from education, is the GI Bill, right? But there are other things that they bring to the table, right?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the White County paper definitely starts showing that. I think our work in the webinars are start showing that, but I think every day veterans are continuing to advocate for themselves and others. And here's some, we're going to talk about aha moments here in a minute, but my aha moment was how many of these things that we could figure out in a study and in an implementation plan or some sort of strategy that would translate to civilians. If we got our processes right with the military, with our veterans in these smaller, lower risk settings, figuring out you know, credit for prior learning, figuring out an ecosystem that serves a certain population. These are all things that civilians think of in other terms, but we almost need a military to civilian translation. So if we can, and we talk about that a lot in resumes, like we need to translate, but we also could pick up and learn a lot from this community. But that was one of my aha. It was like, oh, if we can figure it out here, could this be a best practice? And can I figure it out over here for another population, for another county, for another city? So we're going to transition right over into what was the aha moments for Lucy, Nathan, and Nicole with the commission paper. I'm gonna swing it back to you. Did you have any aha moments in the paper where you're like, I didn't know, this was interesting?
I think the biggest surprise, you know, being in the mental health space in a rural community, you're so often faced with barrier after barrier after barrier. And so I really thought going through this paper and going through the whole process, it was just going to illuminate more gaps that needed to be filled. And it was so surprising to see so many assets. And that's really what came to the top was, wow, we have a lot of strengths here, especially in Nathan. But, you know, with the collaborative effort that's taking place in the community with a lot of these regional partners, it really was just highlighting all of the great assets that we can now nurture rather than so much of that daunting task of filling in these huge gaps. There are a lot of great things about Indiana, about White County. And that was so surprising because, again, in the mental health space, it's just doom and gloom. But really, really proud of what came to light.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I didn't know much about White County other than Monticello, right? The lake, going to Indiana Beach, right? As a kid, and you know, that whole Indiana experience. I had friends that lived on Monticello, on the, you know, just right there. But being able to really dive into seeing that you do have a lot of benefits for veterans, a lot of connections. And realizing that the VSO's office, Nathan's office, is the connector and the networker to a lot of those. He strengthens the strings to those, and I really, I really want to say that I think that is a best practice. Like it needs to fill that bucket because the more he knows, then the more he is able to navigate and have those conversations. But he also brought, my surprise was that in that research that it brought that it brought the commissioners into it, it brought the mayor into it, it brought the paramedics into it, but the fire department into it, the police department, and all of that, because that's not necessarily where I thought my research would go. Right? I had a preconceived notion that we were going to go in this direction, right? We were going to go into food pantries and down that, and why those are very relevant, right? It also took us into other places where we started making the connection that is where other veterans are, and veterans are serving other veterans in all of these other spaces, and they're showing up as leaders. So that was my aha moment. Nathan, was anything a surprise to you? Did TPMA surprise you at all in our paper?
Sorry, I had to unmute.
Yeah.
So there were definitely a couple surprises. There were certain areas that I just did not feel that anyone kind of noticed. So again, and a lot of that has to do with the different mental health resources. Like I always felt like people didn't realize that this was here, or that was here. So to hear from veterans themselves that, yeah, there's this, there's that, it's like, holy cow, like some of this stuff did work. Like it is here, it is being used. I can't call Ford County over in Logan and say, hey, how many White County veterans have you had? So to hear from veterans that, like, yes, these are resources that we know about. It's like, okay, so all that background work to get that to where they understand, hey, if a veteran comes in, acknowledge that. If it's a funding issue, we can maybe help with that, to hear that those bridges are being gapped. That was one that really, that made us feel great. The housing issue, the biggest thing for me that I guess I'm gonna tiptoe around, there's a housing issue here in White County. What I did not realize was that is hindering INVETS, that is hindering, we all know, if you live here, there's a housing issue. And it's a complex one, because on one hand, we need to grow, we have to grow. But on the other hand, this is a very sought after place to live in a lot of opinions. I mean, people like it here. So it's like, there's risk and reward with growth. So you have to figure out what that fine line is. But that coming out in that study and not realizing that the local issues that have nothing to do with veterans have a lot to do with veterans. So again, then you go and you dig into the housing issue, you realize it's not a housing issue, it's a water issue. We don't have enough good, clean water for houses set up here. There's an issue there. So a lot of this has led us to work with the Randy Strausser over at, somebody help me. Who's Randy Strausser?
Economic development
To see, hey, is there a place that we can be at to just at least hear these issues and kind of better explain, when we're asked these questions, what the county's doing to fix these issues. So then fast forward, it's like now we're involved in maybe a little bit more than we want to be. But again, the end goal stays the same. You're telling us there's an issue. We want to be involved, if not necessarily to help correct it, but to kind of, I don't know anything about water. I don't know anything about how it gets to the house. I don't know. But what I do know is, hey, there's a schedule we're trying to keep. And, one of the ways we've been an asset to that community is saying, hey, we're kind of 2 months behind on this already. Like, how do we bump this along? So even though there's nothing we can do in that situation, just being present, being aware, asking the right questions, ensuring that these people that are making these decisions are aware that veterans are a factor in this. We need people here. But that mixed win, another one that kind of surprised me, some of these veterans don't If they come here and they get good jobs, there are people out there that don't even mention their veterans. So InVets gave a report and it said that they had not one logged veteran that had moved from out of state to White County. Well, now that I have permission from this gentleman to use him as an example, we about a month prior had worked with the gentleman, moved him here from Kentucky and helped him get all set up. We found him a job, all this stuff. Well, what he didn't tell us, InVets had already tried to talk to him. InVets had already kind of offered the same thing. Like there were all these different organizations that he'd reached out to. And again, never followed up anything like that. But it's like, so the disconnect right now that we're trying to figure out who's giving, these organizations such as InVets, who's giving them this information and how positive are we that it's accurate? Are we giving them everything they need to be the asset that they can be? So again, that kind of opened a door for us because again, still unsure of how they get it. But if it's the VA that's reporting, InVets needs to be aware, hey, this group of veterans isn't in this data. Okay, well, now that would give them a better, another avenue to take to find the right people. But so again, it really opened a lot of doors.
As somebody that does a lot of. All right, Vicki, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, first of all, I want to say this.
Yeah.
I want to say that I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to get to some of the other, there's like a Nicole aha moment that's next. And I want to make sure we get to that and we don't run out of time. But there were two things that really struck me with what was talked about here. One is the fact that it was almost an awareness validation for the things that they are doing and the services that are provided, because this study allowed them to find out that people do know what we're doing. People are aware of what we're doing, and they might not have ever otherwise had that information. And the fact that it also brought out what are the pain points, right? We don't have housing. Oh, the water's connected to the housing. Like those are things that they never would have thought probably would have come out of this study, because you're looking so focused at veteran, but there are other things too that affect that. And so those were the two things that I had an aha moment watching this, and I'm like, yes, two things, awareness and pain points. So
yeah, two things that that you and I chase after all the time, right? In our work.
Gotta know.
Yeah, so those are the things that we love to do, right? We love to bring awareness to the pain points, right? We also like solving for them. I have to say, watching that clip again made me realize that Nathan is solving for a veteran issue. He wants to solve it for multiple agencies, but he's going to solve it for the civilians too. So just somebody moving to White County may benefit from the work that Nathan is moving forward and really putting his skill set. So I believe that there's multiple things that are happening there where Nathan's showing up as a great VSO, but he's bringing a skill set. So we can't not recognize the skill set that he's bringing to the table. I am going to say that we are running a little bit over and out of time. So Nicole, if you are watching this or you do watch this, you will be able to see everybody will be able to see your aha moments when we release the full video from last Tuesday. So if you want to see myself and the panelists talking without Vicki and I's over talk, we will send you the uncut version of that so you can see all the things that you missed. I do want to play one more video before we start talking about any questions that anybody has, and that's our efforts. So Allison, do you want to cue up one of the last videos here? Yep.
It's meant to be a tool. It's meant to be an asset. So that study really filled a lot of gaps that we had here. It helped us solve some problems, and it sent us in a couple new directions as well. Things I don't think we would have ever thought of. Housing and water issues. didn't know that was hindering veterans from coming to work at these companies that we have that are doing a lot for veterans. We didn't know that was a hindrance. Now we do.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Nathan. You don't know how that makes me feel. It makes me feel really good because when we go into these things, and especially you if you know me well enough, right, you know that I'm passionate about this. This is something that I want to carry on for a long time, right? And hearing that, it does, right? So anytime that we go into a study, we really just we don't know, right? And we want to take it with care and consideration. But Lucy, after having our first interview with you, Nathan, and having our first interview with Lucy and getting that launch out, I have to say, I had to bring you gifts. Remember? Like I had to bring you gifts because I was like, I need Nathan to be my friend and have him know that we are in this together. We are all a team. We're going to get this. We're going to get this done right. So I appreciate you now acknowledging that. And it's good. It's good. Yeah, Vicky, that was a little emotional moment at the end, right? With the panelists. I have to say that there's a lot of work to be done. And as we go into our last video here in a second, my work goes beyond just doing studies. I volunteer, I sit on boards. And last Saturday, so if anybody needs a call to action to get this work done, I'm going to tell you my anecdotal call to action. I have been doing veteran stand downs for over 10 years, and that's like a one day, all the resources come together in the community. And I have the opportunity to do that in my hometown. And it's the one that I look forward to all year round. The other 6, super happy to look forward, but something about giving back to your hometown, like, puts the excitement around that a little bit more. We prepared, like usual, for about 150 veterans and their spouses. We were overwhelmed by the need. We saw over 300. I personally shook and talked to 227. I chose to do a registration that day and shook and talked to 227 veterans, their spouses, and their family. We saw so many children. There's a systematic need to start solving for this. There is no reason, and I'm going to make this public right now. I don't want to be doing stand downs in 5 years from now. I don't want to be doing them in 10 years from now. I want that money to be diverted to other things, education, their children, their families. But what we saw was, we ran out of supplies within an hour and a half. Our volunteers could not keep up with all of the veterans and their families, and that's resources. That's help with paying electricity bills, that's jobs, that's employment, that is, supplies. It was overwhelming. So if you need a reason why, I hope you use this for today and start looking around at coordinated resources, and giving Vicky and I a call and say, we really want to start because we can see this. And if you haven't, start getting involved. So we're going to play the last thoughts from the panelists. And since the questions have been open, if you have any, Vicky and I will stay on for a little bit longer, but here's the last thoughts from the panelists. I really want to allow you guys to say your goodbyes, and any lasting words. It's a free for all now, Nathan. You're off mute. You go for it.
Well, like I said, at the beginning, I was sort of confused on what this was, but after doing some research, I really do feel like this thing was worth the time and energy that everyone put into it. I also like that, there were certain segments that, hey, we're here to listen to veterans, and I was politely told, keep your mouth shut. Like, we're here to hear them. We don't need you butting in. That's the way it should be done. If I'm in the room, if I'm standing up front, everyone's going to be careful. But again, giving those veterans locally the opportunity to expose potential issues, everything start to finish was handled the right way. I think the data shows a lot of data that we don't get as VSOs. So I think it really.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. And lasting words, Lucy, Nicole, either way.
I'll let Lucy go last since this was her paper. I just, no, this is a great example, and I think it shows how so many different partners can come together, from VSOs, IDVAs, nonprofits like InVets that are invested in this space, having community foundations or funders have this data to drive the conversation, to drive the solutions, to collaborate effectively, utilize resources at a more regional level to make difference, because White County isn't the only one that would have this. There might be some different stats here and there, but ultimately this is something that all rural Indiana needs to look at.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. Lucy, it is your paper, right? It was your wish.
It was my board's wish, honestly. They're the drivers.
Love your
here.
board.
I do too. But, we've been talking a lot about policy and collaboration and all these different partners. But I feel like so much magic took place just among the veterans when they were engaged just in their own town hall. You could tell that they were thirsty to have this kind of environment where they could freely talk about their concerns, how they navigate the system, how difficult the system is to navigate. So it was really, really wonderful. You could tell that they wanted a platform. The community that they share among each other is just fabulous. And so being able to take their words and weave it into all the data, all the collaboration was just magic. So really grateful to be a part of this.
Well, Lucy, Nicole, Nathan, I am so grateful for your guys' time today. All right, Vicki, we're closing up shop, right? We've heard from our panelists, and I appreciate you. You walking us through this today and your reactions.
I appreciate you, and I have some questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Questions, because you and I have talked, about this for a while now, but just some of the nitty-gritty things that I think would be helpful for the audience to know. We don't currently have any questions, so if anybody has questions, please make sure that you put them in the chat. But can you give us a sense of how long did it take to do the study? These engagements, were they, a couple hours, or like what? Give us some of the nitty gritty, just like how it functioned.
Yeah, I believe we launched in October, gave us some space for some holidays in November and December. And the paper was in Lucy's hands by March. So we closed out by March. So, I mean, theoretically, a pretty short timeline here. What we did is the stakeholder engagement happened. Well, for one, we had a great connection. So that always helps making stakeholder engagement work well. So we spent, a few hours, well, I would say an hour per stakeholder, hour and a half per stakeholder, and was able to ask them, very crafted questions to make sure that we got the most out of what they were doing. Then we also did a town hall. So we brought all of the veterans together and did a town hall. We also had another grouping where we were able to speak to the mayor and the commissioners and so forth. So some of those things happened in person. Some of those things happened virtual. I got to visit Monticello a couple times, and it was really great to spend the day in the life in the town and be a guest to them. What else did you ask, Vicki? Like, what else was there?
Well, you gave me the nitty gritty, but now I'm just wondering, when you presented, and I know we're out of time, but I think this is important, is how was this presented then to the county?
Yeah, so so Lucy is a great partner in this. So like ideal client, right? She was like, I'm happy to organize, happy to do this. So she sent out the invite, and then we had a town hall style. So actually the VSO's office is sitting right there. So we brought it into a place that they cared about. And then we were able to just have a conversation very much like this. Candid, open, transparent. Let's talk about what you liked about the paper. Let's talk about what is concerning, and also asking some tough questions. What is the implementation? What strategies are you going to put around this? And can I come back and visit and see where you are in 6 months to a year?
That's wonderful. And Nicole alluded to the fact that she feels like this needs to be done all over Indiana.
Yeah.
Of course, we feel like people all over the country should be looking at it and considering it. And so the opportunity to think that this can work and this type of study can work in a small county, a large county, a regional area, that kind of thing, and taking those kind of things into consideration. But I would just remind our audience that Kelly and I are here to answer questions. Kelly has been involved in this community for a very long time and understands how it functions. And so if there are things that we can do in your community to help move these things along, just get in touch with us.